Your net worth is a digital hallucination on a screen that is about to go dark. And 2026 is the year reality finally kicks in your door to collect a debt you didn't even know you owed. Welcome back to the Awakened Seal. Stop looking at the ticker tape and start looking at the tectonic plates of power shifting beneath your feet. Because the normalcy you are desperately clinging to is a terminal patient on life support. And Donald Trump is the one holding the plug. We are not talking about a mere election cycle or a temporary shift in policy. We are witnessing a total systemic inversion where the rules of the last 80 years are being fed into a high-speed shredder in real time. Trump is not a savior in the traditional sense. He is a kinetic event, a 240-pound wrecking ball swung by the hand of historical necessity to demolish a globalist architecture that has become a bloated parasite on the human soul. 2026 is the X on the geopolitical map where the $35 trillion American debt bomb meets the cold, hard rise of a multipolar world that no longer fears the drone or the dollar. You think you are safe with your 401k and your high-yield savings accounts, but when the 3 days of volatility hit, those digital digits will be as useful as a screen door on a submarine in a deep-sea trench. We are looking at a calculated, controlled demolition of the old guard, a period where the deep state and the Bretton Woods system are being dismantled to make way for a brutal, resource-backed reality where gold, energy, and lead are the only languages spoken with any authority. Trump's return is the signal that the soft power era of diplomatic niceties is dead and the hard power era has begun, where 60% tariffs on China and the systematic gutting of the federal bureaucracy are not just campaign slogans, they are weapons of mass economic destruction aimed directly at the heart of the globalist elite. The 3 days of volatility will be the moment the digital grid shudders, a 72-hour total eclipse of the financial system where credit markets freeze, the just-in-time supply chain snaps like a dry twig under a heavy boot, and the average consumer finally realizes that the grocery store is only 3 days of logistics away from total, primordial anarchy. You have been conditioned for decades to be a ward of the state, a compliant unit of mindless consumption. But in 2026, the state becomes a predator, and the only security you will have is what you can defend with your own 2 hands and your own grounded consciousness. The world in inversion means the East is rising while the West cannibalizes its own institutions, a brutal karmic rebalancing for 40 years of living on borrowed time and printed illusions that had no basis in physical productivity. Trump is the alchemical catalyst who forces every hidden tension to the surface, making the Great Reset a great reckoning for anyone too slow or too arrogant to see the writing on the wall. This is not doom porn for the faint of heart. It is a clinical autopsy of a dying empire. And if you are not preparing your mindset and your assets for a world where the dollar is no longer the undisputed king, you are already a pre-recorded casualty of the 2026 shift. The 3 days will manifest as a total liquidity vacuum, a terrifying period where the money simply isn't there, forcing a reset of the global ledger that will leave the unhedged and the unaware in a state of permanent catatonic shock. You need to decolonize your mind from the incessant propaganda of the legacy media, those teleprompter reading puppets who are paid to tell you everything is transitory, while the floor is being pulled out from under your very feet. We are entering the dark winter of the global economy, a necessary purging of the usury-based system that has enslaved the human race in a web of unpayable debt and spiritual bankruptcy. Trump understands the law of chaos better than any of his contemporaries, and he is using it to bypass the traditional power structures, creating a direct, unfiltered line to a populace that is finally waking up to the fact that they have been sold out by their own leaders for a seat at a globalist table that is now collapsing. 2026 is the year the invisible prison of the fiat system becomes visible to everyone, And the 3 days of volatility are the moment the cell doors are kicked open, but only for those who have the courage to walk out into the storm with a plan. You must transition from a dependent ward to a sovereign individual, focusing your energy on tangible wealth, localized community networks, and a psychological resilience that can withstand the total collapse of the mainstream narrative. This is the end of the grand illusion, the precise moment the curtain is pulled back to reveal that the experts have no clothes, no plan, and no soul, while the Trump storm makes landfall with a ferocity that will redefine the next century of human history. Your survival depends entirely on your ability to read the metaphysics of the market, to see the inversion before it hits the headlines, and to move your energy and resources out of the direct path of the coming shockwave. The dollar is a dead man walking, and the 2026 pole shift in power will see a return to real value that will crush the speculators and the paper pushers who have dominated the world since 1971. Trump's America First is a defensive crouch, an attempt to insulate the core of the republic while the global periphery burns in a hyperinflationary firestorm that is already licking at the edges of the Eurozone and the yen. You must realize that the system is not broken. It is working exactly as intended to consolidate power during the collapse, and your only hedge is to step outside of its reach before the 72-hour freeze begins. This is a game of high-stakes musical chairs, and in 2026 the music doesn't just stop. The chairs are set on fire and the room is locked from the outside. You have been warned that the inversion is here, that the 3 days are coming, and that the man with the golden tie is merely the finger pointing at the moon. Yet most of you are still staring at the finger instead of the celestial collision that is about to occur. We are analyzing the toxification of the social contract, where the people no longer trust the institutions and the institutions have stopped pretending to care about the people, creating a volatile chemical mixture that only requires the 2026 spark to explode into a new era of neo-feudalism and radical sovereignty. If you are still waiting for a return to normal, you are effectively a walking corpse in a world that has already moved on to a much harsher, more honest reality. Part 1 of this autopsy is complete, the stage is set, and the actors are in their final positions for a 2026 that will be remembered as the year the world turned upside down, and the 3 days of volatility rewrote the DNA of global commerce. But if you think this is the peak of the mountain, you are gravely mistaken, because in Part 2, we dive into the secret protocols of the elite and the hidden architecture of the new sovereignty that will emerge from the radioactive ashes of the 3-day firestorm. So brace yourselves for a descent into the true heart of the 2026 monster, where the real masters of the game are waiting to see who is actually awake and who is just dreaming of survival. The silence you hear right now isn't peace. It's the vacuum created by a world holding its breath before the final plunge into the abyss of the 2026 Great Inversion. And if you can't hear the gears of the old machine grinding to a halt, you are already deaf to your own survival. Welcome back to the Awakened Seal. We are stepping out of the theoretical and into the visceral reality of the 3 days of volatility, a period that will be recorded in history as the 72 hours that broke the back of the globalist lie and forced every human being on this planet to face the raw, unvarnished truth of their own existence. Donald Trump's role in this 2026 climax is not that of a traditional president, but that of a chief liquidator for a bankrupt civilization, a man whose return was engineered by the very friction of a system that can no longer sustain its own contradictions. You need to understand the granular mechanics of the 3 days, because when the lights flicker and the digital buy buttons disappear, your Ivy League degree and your social media following will be worth exactly 0 in a world that has suddenly reverted to the laws of thermodynamics and kinetic power. On the first day of the 2026 eclipse, we will witness the Great Liquidity Freeze, A moment when the fractional reserve banking system finally admits it has no clothes, triggered by a simultaneous withdrawal of support from the BRICS Plus nations and a Trump-led audit of the Federal Reserve that reveals a black hole of debt so deep it swallows the very concept of the dollar. This isn't just a market crash, it's a reality correction, where the trillions of dollars of derivative fake money are vaporized in a 24-hour cycle of panic that will see every major stock exchange shuttered for emergency maintenance that never ends. You've been told that the system is too big to fail, but I'm telling you that the system is too big to save, and Trump is the only one with the sociopathic clarity to let the rotting branches fall so the tree of the nation can breathe again. During the second day, the logistics snap occurs, a total paralysis of the just-in-time delivery systems that have made you soft and dependent on a global supply chain that is now being dismantled by 60% tariffs and a naval blockade of the mind. When the trucks stop moving because the digital payment rails are frozen and the fuel is being rationed for national security priorities, you will see the true face of your neighbors as the thin veneer of civilization peels away to reveal the hungry, desperate animal beneath. Trump's executive order for national resilience will be the hammer that falls, nationalizing key industries and turning the United States into a fortress of production, while the rest of the world, addicted to American consumption, falls into a hyperinflationary death spiral. You've spent your life being a consumer, a parasite on the future, but in 2026, the consumer is the first to be sacrificed at the altar of the producer, as the world inverts from a service-based fantasy to a resource-based reality where if you don't build it, grow it, or defend it, you don't own it. The political theater in Washington will be replaced by a military-industrial directocracy, where Trump utilizes the 1807 Insurrection Act not to oppress the people, but to decapitate the deep state bureaucracy that has been the true shadow government for the last century. Day 3 of the volatility is the great reset of identity, the moment when the new dollar, backed not by faith and credit, but by gold, oil, and American land, is announced, wiping out the savings of the complacent while rewarding those who had the foresight to exit the digital panopticon. This is the world in inversion, where the first shall be last and the last shall be first, as the urban elites who lived off the fat of the financial system find themselves helpless in their glass towers, while the deplorables in the heartland, with their wells, their wood stoves, and their community bonds, become the new aristocracy of survival. Trump is the alchemist, turning the lead of a collapsed empire into the gold of a sovereign republic. But the heat required for that transformation will be enough to burn anyone who is still clinging to the old narratives of globalist cooperation and inclusive economics. The 2026 inversion is also a spiritual war, a battle for the frequency of the human soul, where the 3 days of chaos are designed to trigger a mass awakening by removing the digital distractions that have kept the population in a state of hypnotic trance. You must understand that the media is the enemy of the people, a propaganda machine that will use the 3 days to spread maximum terror, claiming that the world is ending, when in reality, it is only their world that is ending. Trump's Truth Social and the decentralized X networks will be the only lifelines of information, bypassed by a military-grade emergency broadcast system that will tell the people the truth for the first time in 80 years. That you are a sovereign being, that your debt is a fiction, and that your future is in your own hands. The technocratic slavery that the Davos crowd planned for you, the carbon credits, the CBDCs, the 15-minute cities, will be incinerated in the 2026 firestorm because Trump is playing a Game of Thrones while they are still playing Monopoly. We are looking at a bifurcation of the human race, a split between those who can adapt to a high volatility, high agency environment and those who will beg for the chains of a digital dictatorship just to have a warm meal. The 3 days are the great filter of our species, a test of whether you have the internal sovereignty to remain calm while the external world is screaming in agony. Trump's 2026 proclamation will be the death warrant for the unipolar world order as he pulls the United States out of the UN, the WHO, and the WTO, declaring that the American dream is no longer for sale to the highest globalist bidder. This deglobalization will be violent, it will be messy, and it will be the most beautiful thing you have ever seen if you understand that the old world had to die for the new human to be born. You need to stop asking, when will things go back to normal? Because normal was the prison you were born in, and 2026 is the year the prison walls are being knocked down by an orange-haired man with a wrecking ball and a mandate from the grand architect of history. The 3 days of volatility are the Bardo state, the transition between the death of the age of iron and the birth of the age of gold, a period where time itself will seem to dilate, and the decisions you make in a split second will determine the trajectory of your lineage for 1,000 years. You must decolonize your mind from the scarcity mindset that the system has beaten into you, realizing that the collapse is actually a release from a system of usury and lies that has poisoned the earth and the human spirit. Trump's 2026 strategy involves a total reshoring of industry, meaning the air in the Midwest will smell like coal and steel again, and the white-collar paper shufflers will find themselves learning to weld or starve in the new economy of tangibles. The world in inversion means the experts are the fools, and the fools are the sages, as the common sense of the working man becomes the most valuable commodity on the planet during the 72-hour blackout. You need to have hard assets under your own control: physical gold, physical silver, storable food, and clean water. Because in the 3 days, any asset that requires a counterparty to fulfill its promise will be defaulted on. The banking holidays of 2026 will not be a temporary pause. They will be a financial reset, where the small depositor is protected by a Trumpian People's Bank, while the institutional looters are left to drown in their own negative equity. This is the karma of the West, a great reckoning for the arrogance of thinking we could print wealth out of thin air while the rest of the world toiled in the dirt to provide us with our luxuries. The BRICS Rebellion is the external hammer, and the Trump resurgence is the internal anvil, and the globalist system is the metal being hammered into a new shape between them. You must be psychologically bulletproof, prepared to see the icons of your culture, the mega banks, the tech giants, the Hollywood stars, fall into irrelevance and bankruptcy as the bread and circuses of the old world are replaced by the truth and trial of the new. The 3 days will also see the UFO disclosure used as a galactic wildcard, a move by the Trump administration to unite the American tribe against a greater unknown, while simultaneously revealing forbidden technologies that will render the oil and gas economy obsolete overnight. This is the energy inversion, where the 0-point secrets of the deep state are finally liberated to power a new civilization that doesn't need to fight wars for petrodollars. You are not a victim of this collapse. You are a witness to a cosmic event, a galactic reset that is manifesting through the crude and corrosive medium of American politics, because that is the only language the modern world understands. Trump is the antidote to the poison of globalism, but an antidote always causes a healing crisis before the patient recovers, and 2026 is the fever pitch of that crisis. You must invert your life now, moving from centralized dependence to decentralized autonomy, building your own ark of survival before the reign of volatility begins. The 72-hour eclipse will be the darkest night for the unprepared, but it will be the first dawn for the awakened, who will see the new earth emerging from the mist of the old world's demise. Every tariff, every deportation, and every tweet from the 2026 Trump administration is a strategic strike against the globalist neural network, forcing the beast to retreat from its control over the American psyche. You need to be tactically flexible, ready to move, hide, or stand and fight, depending on how the inversion manifests in your local geography, because the 3 days will hit the megacities with a violence that the rural areas will only hear about on the radio. This is the end of the era of the individual and the beginning of the era of the tribe, where your social capital with real people will be the only thing that keeps you alive when the state is busy resetting the ledger. Trump's 2026 vision is a neo-nationalist utopia, a world of sovereign borders, sovereign money, and sovereign souls. But the gate to that world is narrow, and only those who have dropped the baggage of the old world can pass through it. The world in inversion is touring the pyramid upside down, putting the foundation of the common man at the top and the capstone of the elite in the dirt where it belongs. You must embrace the chaos, for chaos is the great liberator that breaks the stagnation of the status quo and allows the divine spark of human creativity to flourish once again. The 3 days of volatility are the holy trinity of destruction, purification, and restoration, a 72-hour ritual of fire that will burn away the dross of the 20th century. Trump is the high priest of this ritual, a man who was forged in the fires of New York real estate to understand that you have to tear it down to the studs before you can build a masterpiece. You are the remnant, the awakened ones, who were born for this moment, and your fear is the only thing that can stop you from claiming your inherent power in the new reality. The 2026 inversion is not a theory, it is an event horizon, and we have already passed the point of no return, so stop looking back and start looking within. The 3 days will reveal your true character, showing you whether you are a leader or a follower, a creator or a destroyer, a sovereign or a slave. Trump's 2026 is the year of the sword, where the truth will cut through the lies like a laser through butter, leaving no room for gray areas or neutral ground. You must pick a side in the Great Inversion, and that side had better be the side of reality, because the side of the illusion is about to be deleted from the global hard drive. The 72-hour eclipse is the silence between the notes of the symphony of history, a breath of God that will blow away the chaff and leave only the grain of true humanity. You are the awakened seal, and your task is to hold the line for yourself, your family, and the future of the human spirit, while the storm of 2026 rages outside. The inversion is beautiful, the volatility is necessary, and the outcome is preordained for those who have the eyes to see and the heart to believe. Trump is the messenger, 2026 is the message, and the 3 days are the signature on the new covenant between the American people and the truth. Stand tall, breathe the air of the new world, and never forget that you were chosen to be alive and awake during the greatest show on earth, the grand inversion of the human story. The 3 days are coming, the clock is ticking, and the seal is broken. Be ready, be sovereign, and be unafraid. The new world is yours if you have the will to claim it in the ashes of 2026.